Okay, this is our agenda. We're going to be talking about recruiting for success. We'll talk a little bit about member training, your responsibilities as supervisor, and the site training. We'll dig in a little bit about reporting, but we're going to have a whole separate webinar on reporting and data collection, so we're not going to go too deep into specifics with that. We are going to cover some of the major rules and regulations of the program, and finally end with some special VISTA initiatives. Now, I do want to also mention that this PowerPoint presentation is typically delivered by a staff person from CNCS. And today you get to have me and Sam, and we're going to do our best to cover as much information as we can, as accurately as we can. But just to reinforce that I work for NeighborWorks America. I'm a NeighborWorks America employee. Sam is a VISTA member. Neither one of us work for the Corporation for National Community Service, but we are presenting their presentation and their slides. So there may be a point where if you do ask a question, we might not know the answer. If we don't know the answer, we'll get you that information and get you that information. Okay, I'm going to start by talking about the key players in VISTA. This is just a general overview, and then we have some other slides after this that go into more depth about who all these folks are. So there's a lot of players in VISTA. For the most part, you're probably thinking, well, it's just going to be me and my VISTA, but it really is a whole bunch of us that are very involved in the VISTA program. The Corporation for National and Community Service is the government agency that administers the VISTA program. This is a government program. So as with all government programs, there is an inspector general. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a later slide. Then there's something called VISTA headquarters. That's their main headquarters that's located here in DC, actually not that far from where NeighborWorks America is. And as part of the VISTA headquarters, there's the management, the training unit, and something called the VISTA member support unit, which is often referred to as VMSU. And then we have something called state offices. So every state has a CNCS office. The NeighborWorks America project works closely with the Ohio State office. So you're going to see Ohio plastered in a lot of places, and that's why. So you're going to see in terms of different cities that might pop across your screen or emails or PowerPoints, you will see obviously your own city and state, which is where as a subsite you are hosting your VISTA. You will see Washington, D.C. mentioned because NeighborWorks is located in Washington, D.C. and we are the sponsor. And then you'll also see Ohio referenced because we work with the Ohio State office and they are out of Columbus. And then, as I mentioned, NeighborWorks America is the sponsor of this particular VISTA program. So when you see the word sponsor, that's referring to us, to NeighborWorks America. If you see the word subsites, that's referring to you and your organization. And then you all are the supervisors, and you will be recruiting for VISTA members. And we refer to VISTAs as VISTA members. So I'm just going to go through these next slides briefly, and then if there's any questions about it, then please come back and type them in, or we could talk over the phone. The Inspector General, the reason this is a slide in here and I'm mentioning it, because they do get involved in monitoring all national programs and VISTA. And the NeighborWorks America program is the third largest national VISTA program in operation. So we're a good size. And we have been audited before by the Inspector General. So it is a thing. I'm not just saying this because it exists. But in the first couple years of the program, we did have the IG come and do inspections on site at some of our subsites and also at NeighborWorks America. And they are looking for program compliance, basically. And their job is to make sure that there's no waste, fraud, or abuse happening at any of the CNCS grantees. NeighborWorks America is the grantee, or sub-grantees, and that's all of you. You are a sub-grantee of NeighborWorks America. Okay, and this slide basically covers what the VISTA headquarters is made up of. So there's the management side, which creates the policy and translates the regulation. There's the training unit, which some of you have heard me talk about over email. For those of you that are brand new and you need to attend the supervisor orientation, it's the CNCS training unit that schedules that, manages that whole process. They take care of your travel. So a number of you will be working directly with the CNCS training unit. You might have heard me mention the name Eric Powell. He's the person in the training unit that I work with most closely to get you all registered for the supervisor orientation. And then there's something called the VMSU, which stands for VISTA Member Support Unit. They, for whatever reason, are located in Austin, Texas. So oftentimes your VISTA may have reason to contact them. And it's kind of like a hotline or a helpline for VISTAs. So if your VISTA ever has a problem, say with their pay or benefits or just anything that's truly VISTA related that really doesn't have anything to do with your project and the work they're doing for you, but if it's really on the VISTA side of things, they would communicate with the VMSU to get assistance or get some questions answered. Okay, what is the state office? The state office, our state office, which you should know is in Columbus, Ohio, and they provide technical assistance to grantees, so that would be folks like NeighborWorks, because we're a big sponsor of a VISTA program. They do monitor our program. They approve all VISTA placements. So what that means is when you are hiring and recruiting for your VISTA candidate, you're not technically hiring that VISTA. You are selecting a candidate for consideration. So your selection then goes to the state office, and the folks at the state office decide whether or not they're going to accept that selection. Now, most of the time they do, but every once in a while they may come back with questions. So you need to understand that CNCS are the folks that are hiring the VISTA. You are recommending the VISTA. And then they also approve all VADs, which are VISTA assignment descriptions and service opportunities. And you should be a little familiar with that terminology by now, because your service opportunities are going to be due soon, and then following that, your VADs will be due in the e-grant system, and we'll talk a little bit about that later in the slideshow. And then the state office will also assist in the design of the VISTA project, and mainly I work closely with them where that's concerned. And so NeighborWorks America is the sponsor. We have the direct relationship with the CNCS state office in Ohio. We oversee all the VISTA operations for the project. We report to CNCS on your behalf. So you actually report into NeighborWorks America because we are the intermediary. We manage, ultimately, we have ultimate responsibility for managing the members and the supervisors. We verify all member attendance. So the responsibility you have in that is making sure you let us know if your VISTA member is not reporting to service. But we take that up on your behalf. So you don't have to actually go anywhere to verify attendance. I do that. You just need to let me know if somebody's not reporting for service. And then it's our responsibility to understand and communicate the rules and regulations of the program to you. And you have many opportunities to learn about that through us and the information that we provide. If you choose not to, or you're unavailable to learn about it for any reason, the ultimate responsibility is on you to know the rules and regulations, which is why it's really important to come to these trainings, go to the supervisor orientation if you are new, because you need to understand there oftentimes compliance issues will arise, and that's not unusual. But you need to understand what the rules are so we can maintain them and not fall into any situations where the program is suspect because somebody is not compliant. And then the VISTA team. This is the VISTA team is made up of myself here at the NeighborWorks headquarters, and then Sam Sauter, she's our VISTA leader. She's here with me as well. She works here at the DC office. And then the other name you're going to see a lot is Tina Dunphy. She is the Ohio State Program Director, and she is also the program officer for the NeighborWorks project. So basically what that means is she's responsible for all the CNCS projects in the state of Ohio, and then also our national NeighborWorks program. And this is you. You are subsites. So when you see the word subsites, we are referring to you all. You are the organizations that actually house the VISTA members on behalf of the sponsor. We're the sponsor. You design the specific projects that are, you've identified. Your projects align with the overall goals of the sponsor. So as you remember from our application, our project focuses on economic opportunity. So all of your projects fall under that umbrella of economic opportunity. You provide workspace for the VISTA members, and you support member travel for VISTA assignments. Let me explain that real quick. What that is referring to is I'm not talking about their daily commute. For them to get to your organization. If your VISTA member needs to travel someplace outside of their normal commute to complete their VISTA assignment, then you need to support that travel. So you would offer them the same reimbursement that you would staff when staff travel for your agency. And then you are all sub-site supervisors. So you manage the VISTA members' day-to-day work. You supervise and mentor the VISTA member. Being a mentor is very important in this program. And you also verify their attendance to me, to NeighborWorks. Like I said before, I submit the report that tells CNCS that they're reporting for service, and that's important because they get paid biweekly. So we don't want to run into an issue where they stop reporting and there's an overpayment, and that can become a bit of a mess. So you verify their attendance to me. And then there's the VISTA members. So VISTA members are folks that are part of a national service program. And as I'm saying this, I'm just realizing that we have a VISTA member right here. So I'm going to stop myself and let Sam go over this because she's actually in a better position to tell you about who and what VISTA members are.
Cool. So yes, VISTA members are part of a national service program, and they serve 365 days or a year, and we support poverty alleviation in our community. So VISTA members really do commit. They're on call 24/7, but they usually just work in your offices, but they really are available to like work any other times that you might need them to show up to your site. And like I said, it's 365 days of commitment, and it only supports 6,000 members nationwide. There are other AmeriCorps programs outside of VISTA, but VISTA is the one that you all are part of, and they are dedicated to the local community. You might have heard of NCCC or Peace Corps. Those are also national service programs, but they focus on a larger demographic. Okay, so this is really important for you to understand. Engaging with your VISTA member in an appropriate way is very important for their success during their service term. So they're not interns and they're not employees. They're not volunteers in the sense that they just volunteer at your organization like someone who may live in your community. They're not just warm bodies, they're not outsiders, they're not just the VISTA. VISTA members really do take a huge commitment, and they really make a lot of sacrifices to be a VISTA member. They get paid on the poverty line, and that's something that you should really understand, that they are actually living like the community that you're serving in. So it's important to really lift them up and appreciate them for the fact that they are, doing this service for your organization, and they hold an immense value and are really should be integrated into your organization as a part of your team. They're not employees, but they're also very, very valuable in the way that an employee would be.
Okay, thanks, Sam. For 1 second and see if there are any questions before we go and head into the next section. So if you have any questions on any of the material we just covered, go ahead and chat that in, and we can address that now or over chat, or if you want, you could save it till later and we'll have a Q&A at the end. Okay, we must be doing good. No questions. All right, moving on. What is AmeriCorps VISTA? Some of this might be very new to you. I know it was to me when I first started working on the program. So the mission of VISTA is to eliminate and alleviate poverty, and that is done through program development and capacity building. They create sustainable structures and solutions. So your VISTAs typically are either building a new program or expanding on an existing program. Why? And apparently Lyndon Johnson charged us with helping people attain equal opportunities. So it's a little bit of a history lesson too. All of you should be a little familiar with what VISTA is because we went into great detail about that in the application. And this is very important for you to know because if you don't understand why VISTA exists, you're not in a great position to be building a great VISTA project. And then that can lead to complications. So if you have any questions about this or would ever like to talk about that offline, do let us know.
And also for the kind of history behind VISTA, there's the VISTA campus that anyone can look at whether they're a VISTA or not. And there's a lot of information in one of the first tabs about the history, the mission, and all that kind of stuff as well. So I'm also going to talk about this next slide. This is just the overview. Like I said before, VISTAs serve 365 days at their sponsoring organization, and these are the benefits of service. These are going to be things that you want to explain to your candidates and anyone who's interested in the VISTA position. These are some things that are unique to VISTA and not to other national service programs, so these are really appropriate things for you to be mentioning so that you can have some more success in your recruitment. So they get 10 medical days and 10 personal days for leave. So that would be approved time that you would approve, but those are the days that they are allotted for their service. They get an education award or can select a cash stipend. The education award is around $6,000 and the cash stipend accrues at $4.98 a day, which is about $1,800 for a full year of service. These benefits are only given to VISTA members who successfully complete 365 days of service. So that's something that you want to make sure that you communicate with members and candidates after they join your site so that they understand that these are benefits only after they complete their service. There's training as well. VISTA members will attend a pre-service orientation that's going to be in Columbus, Ohio, and in August before they actually begin. And then they also will have access to webinars that the VISTA leader will do and other training materials that are provided by VISTA themselves. And then also, this is really cool, there's a relocation benefit. So for me, my first year of service was in California, but I'm from Maryland. So I got money to be able to relocate to California. So that was very helpful. You can get up to $1,000. It's based on how far the distance is between the home of record, which is the address that they put into their My AmeriCorps portal. So their profile, that's where they say that they're living, and then the new address of your host site, not where they're going to live, but the actual host site. And they will also be able to get $550 added to their first living allowance payment, depending on that kind of travel relocation distance as well. And that can be used to help with any of the travel expenses they might incur, or like things like a deposit for like a new apartment or somewhere that they're going to live. And also something really cool about VISTA is they receive non-competitive eligibility, which is basically something that aids them in the federal hiring process. Other national service programs don't get this benefit, so this is something that's really cool. It's good for a year after they complete their service, so that's another really cool benefit. And then there's a healthcare stipend. They would have to apply for that early on. There's like a certain deadline. I think it's about 2 months that they have to be able to like sign up for the benefit. It's not actually like healthcare coverage, but it does supplement things like co-pays and some like routine dental care and optical. And then along with the education award, anyone, even if they don't select that, can get forbearance or defer their student loan payments. So that's just another thing that is really helpful, as VISTA members will be living on a pretty low budget. It's really cool that they'll be able to like get rid of some of those payments that they would incur during their time during service.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about what sponsors are prohibited from doing. So in this case, we're talking about NeighborWorks America, and we're talking about you, subsites. So you may not display staff or volunteers with your VISTA members. That's a big one. And some sites struggle with that. So basically what that means is you can't bring on a VISTA to fill what would normally be a staff position or even a volunteer position. So if you're asking a VISTA to do something that a staff person was previously working on, or a volunteer was previously working on, a volunteer outside of the VISTA program, a non-national service volunteer, that would be prohibited. And this is outlined in the memorandum of understanding that you will be receiving next week from me. So I'll be emailing out a blank template. Blank in terms of you need to put in your name and your information, but it basically kind of covers a lot of the rules and regulations of the program. So you'll want to read that carefully before signing it, and then you'll submit that back to us. So also in this MOU, it also covers how you may not have members participate in any prayers, proselytizing, or lobbying. Also, you may not discriminate or harass your members. Another big one is firing members. You are not at liberty to fire your VISTA member. You can't do that. VISTA members don't work for you. They can be, you may ask for them to be removed from your project. So in which case, if you're having a problem, you'll come to us about that, but you may not verbally or on email, you can't write it down, you cannot fire a VISTA member. That's a big no-no, and that does come with consequences. So stay away from that one. Please talk to me if you're having problems. You may not give your VISTA members direct service as part of their assignment. There are 3 very limited situations where some direct service is okay, and those 3 situations can be covered by these 3 E's. Is everybody doing it? For education purposes and for emergencies. So if everybody in your small office has some type of a rotation where they're covering their phone coverage for an hour a day, and your VISTA is in that rotation with everybody else, that's okay. If your VISTA needs to partake in some direct service so they can educate themselves on a larger project, but it's a limited amount of direct service and has a time frame, that's okay too. And then in the case of an emergency, something happens and someone needs to stay behind to watch the office and act as the receptionist, just in that one emergency situation, that's okay. So now we're going to get on to some of the what members are prohibited from doing. I'm going to let Sam cover that.
Cool. So the same things that you cannot request members to do is things that they also can't do on their own. So the proselytizing, lobbying, electoral activities, running for office, fundraising for political candidates. And this information is on the VISTA campus, and they'll cover this stuff in PSO as well. And part of that falls under the Hatch Act, and you can look that up on VISTA campus if you want more information about that. They can not take classes that interfere with their service. So we'll talk about this a little bit later. They are able to take some classes, but as long as it's not interfering with their like full-time of direct service, and same thing with a part-time job. And those things would have to be approved by you, the sub-site supervisor. And then also they cannot teleserve if there's no documentation. There's also a whole process for that So there are some things that they can do, but there are some steps that you have to take to make sure that you're staying in compliance.
Okay, so VISTA members can have outside employment if you approve it and we approve it. And there is a special approval form that you'll be receiving with your enrollment paperwork. So if you end up selecting a candidate that you want to recommend be your VISTA, and they already have a job, say a part-time job, and they want to keep that part-time job while they serve as your VISTA, there's a form, another form that you will need to fill out. Now, as long as that job doesn't interfere with their VISTA service to you, that's okay, and you have, you're the main approvers. So as long as it's okay with you, it's pretty much going to be okay with us. VISTA members can be enrolled in school, but as Sam said, it cannot interfere with their service. So if your agency is open Monday to Friday and you have a typical 9 to 5, your VISTA members cannot be taking classes in the middle of the day on, say, a Tuesday and Thursday and be gone for 3 hours. That interferes with service. So, just be careful during your interviewing stage and ask about outside employment, ask about school, because there are additional forms that will need to be filled out if you are recommending somebody that has a side job or is in school.
Okay, we have a few questions in the chat. Sorry I missed these. They're going back to the leave days. So here's how it works. So if it's a holiday, that's a federal holiday, they get off. But if your site does not observe that holiday, they don't. They still have to show up for service. If your site is closed for a period of time, say like during a holiday, the VISTA will have to take those days off, or you'd have to set up some arrangement for them to be able to serve those days as well. So basically, if it's a federal holiday and you observe it, that's a day that they get off. That doesn't affect any of their personal leave time. If it's a holiday that is a federal holiday that you don't observe, they still have to serve with you because your office is open. And then also if there's any sort of time where the office is closed, they still have to serve, or they'd have to take those days off. And then for the electoral activities and including people to vote, registering to vote, you can't have them do that. They can't be too involved with any sort of they can still vote and things like that, but they can't be involved in that process because it's usually politicized. So yeah, they can't be involved in that either. And more questions about that.
But as situations arise, come to us if you have questions, because sometimes a response can vary on a case-by-case basis.
Oh, yeah, they're asking, is there a limit to how much VISTA members can make with outside employment? As long as they're staying with their part-time and it's not interfering with service, there's not an amount. We can check on that.
That's actually a good question.
Yeah, so we'll check on that.
Not to my knowledge, but that's a very good question.
And also working from home, we'll talk a little bit about that as well. There's a teleservice form that you can fill out, and as long as there's certain conditions, so they have proper space to work in, they have a laptop or whatever kind of materials that they would need for service that they would typically have in the office, you would have to get that signed, and then that would have to be approved by CNCS, and then that's the process, and you would go through us to get that process started. So if that comes up later on, just send the information to us, and if you have any questions, more specific questions, we can answer those later too.
Should we move on?
Yeah, back to the holiday. Yeah, if it's not a federal holiday, then they don't have that day off. They'd have to take a day.
They have to use their leave time.
Yeah, they have to use their leave time for that.
Okay, so this next slide is just going on a little bit into what does it mean to interfere with service. And as I was saying before, VISTA members are expected to serve in a full-time capacity, but that's up to you as the organization to define full-time. So if your employees are showing up to work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, that's full-time. Some folks may be 8 to 4, and if that your agency is 8 to 4, then those are your hours. Some agencies work 37.5 hours. Some might have a 40-hour work week. It can vary slightly. It's very rare to see a VISTA work anything less than 35 hours a week. I haven't seen that, and it would be problematic if your agency defined full-time as less than 35 hours a week. So it's really defined by you, and your VISTA needs to be available for you to serve in that full-time capacity. And then they're also required to follow your agency rules and requirements and service hours. Now, that said, what overserps that would be the CNCS rules. So VISTAs are firstly responsible to adhere to CNCS rules, and then your rules would come second. So like Sam was saying, you know, if your organization is closed for a week and a half, you know, in December, because it's kind of around that time covering, you know, Christmas going into New Year's, that's not okay with CNCS. So VISTAs still need to serve or use their leave time. They just can't serve because your agency is closed. So that's an example of a CNCS rule that takes precedence over your agency rules. Okay, so I know we just checked for questions, but seeing as we're going into a new section, do we want to check and see if there are any more questions before we get into recruiting? Okay, full speed ahead. So this is what you are all doing right now or very soon about to be doing. How do you recruit for your VISTA member? Well, as you know, you need to have created your VISTA assignment description. That's your VAD. And I'm not going to do a test situation. I'm just going to tell you your VAD is due May 11th. And you're going to want to have it into eGrants by May 11th. You want to identify the skills necessary for your position, develop your recruitment plan, have an interview plan. I'm going to be sending out more information that's going to assist you with all this in terms of, say, for example, some interview questions. You actually already got the bulk of everything you need when we sent out the recruitment guide. That was that very large PDF file that came out a couple of weeks ago. It is really chock full of information, so do jump ahead in that PDF file, the recruitment guide, because there's a lot of great information in there that's going to help you have a successful recruitment experience when looking for that perfect fit. And then this will look very familiar to some of you. This is what the VISTA assignment description looks like. This is what you will be filling out online in the eGrant system. And this basically just covers what it is your VISTA is going to be doing over the course of the next 12 months. Now keep in mind, you are filling this out to keep somebody busy for full-time busy for 12 months. And if the state office needs to review and approve these VADs, and it's not unusual for them to get rejected. If your VAD gets rejected, they will let us know, and then we will let you know, and then you'll need to make the appropriate edits. But that little circle cycle thing can get a little crazy. So my advice to you is submit a strong VAD from the get-go so you're not in a position where CNCS has to reject it. If you want to show it to us first, that's never a bad idea. And then this is just going on to show you what the template looks like and recruitment plan. So it's important that your VAD is complete and you understand what the position is. So then when you're recruiting, you can explain it to potential candidates and you could actually use it in your interview process. There are many places to advertise your position. The one place you absolutely have to advertise it is in the My AmeriCorps eGrants portal. You're going to have a listing up there. You have to have a listing up there. Of course, you could list it in other local networks or wherever it is you've had success finding volunteers or staff even. You want to vet your candidates thoroughly. I recommend vetting somebody the same way you would if you were hiring a staff person. You're going to be interviewing that person. You might even want to give them an assignment or a writing test, and definitely check references. You're going to get 2 references through the eGrant system. Check 2 more. Don't stop there. Typically, those 2 references are going to be excellent, and if they're not, that's suspect. But go above and beyond. Call the previous employer, have a conversation, check a reference like you would for an employee. And then you'll be selecting your candidate through the eGrant system. And more information will come out about that. I just don't want to inundate you with too much too early on. So I'm spreading it out. But the actual selection is going to be a button that you click in the eGrant system, which if you were on last week's webinar, you saw Tanya explain that process. If you weren't on last week's webinar, you have the recording and the PowerPoint slides. We sent them out. So please take a minute to look that over and even watch the recording if you need a refresher on how to use the system. And then you're going to be onboarding your candidates. Also very similar to how you might onboard a new employee. And we'll get into a little bit more about what that means, but just keep in mind that your person just doesn't show up and start. There's a whole process involved, and then once they do start, there's a significant training component, and that is your responsibility to offer that training. Okay, so some things to consider. So if you haven't already found the chat feature on the Zoom technology, go ahead and look for that. Open up your chat box. Things to consider. I'd like you to think about all the qualities that would make an excellent VISTA member. And if we have some veteran supervisors on the WebEx right now, go ahead, if you wouldn't mind, throw in a couple descriptors in terms of what you think makes a really excellent VISTA members, because that information would be really valuable for some of our new supervisors. And then conversely, what qualities of your VISTA members, what qualities have made them not so great? So if you see something in somebody, what do you shy away from? So what are you looking for and what are you not looking for? And then folks, go ahead and open up your chat and read through those responses, because I'm hoping that some of this, we could use some of the information from the people on the site that have had these experiences. And ideally, it would be great if you all had opportunities to network with each other. So I'm going to try and facilitate that as best I can. Some of you may have had in the past a VISTA member resign. So it would be very helpful for the new folks if you could list some reasons why somebody would quit. And then for those of you that haven't had this experience yet, just go ahead and look through that chat box and see what's coming in and see what people are listing as positive attributes for VISTA members that they look for, and then look through the reasons that people might leave the program and think about how you can mitigate for that. You know, completing a year of VISTA is not easy. So you want to go into this interviewing process with really strong interview questions so you can really get a good sense of the candidate and their commitment and why they want to do VISTA, and if it's really going to fit well with them, because the fit has to be on both sides. And, you know, they're not doing it for the money. So, you know, really take your time to vet, interview, have different folks at your organization. They could interview your VISTAs. Do your due diligence up front, because that's when it will really pay off later. If you wait too long to recruit, if you rush the process, if you cut corners, typically that doesn't end well.
We have a question that is kind of related to that. Should we wait until the VAD has been approved to share the listing opportunity in external sources and pages? So,
no, you don't have to wait. It can take the CNCS state office anywhere from 28 or 24 to 48 hours, sometimes longer, to get around to reviewing and approving a VAD. So don't wait. Definitely forge ahead.
Oh, I love seeing all your comments in the chat. you haven't been looking at those, there's some really good information in there. So thanks everyone for sharing your experience and using what you've known about VISTA and what you hope to look for in your VISTA member that will be serving at your site.
Okay, so one of the things you're going to be doing very soon, if you haven't already, and this service opportunity listing is due in the portal by May 4th, so you will be doing it soon. It's basically the job listing that potential applicants are going to see, and they're going to see it in the My AmeriCorps portal, but you can use a version of this same listing if you're going to advertise in other places, which I do recommend you do. So this slide is basically just saying it's really important that you think about what that 2-line description is going to be, because you're competing against a lot of other VISTA opportunities, and you want folks to click on your opportunity, and you really only have one short chance to grab their attention, and that's going to be with that 2-line description. So keep it brief, but keep it something someone's going to want to click into to read more about your program description. So you're going to talk about the intent of your project and why it's going to benefit the community. And then also in your listing, you'll have an opportunity to get more into the nitty-gritty and talk about the VISTA activities. And you want to be detailed without being overly detailed, but detailed enough so that the member can have a really good sense of what they might be working on and the skills that it requires. So this is a really important slide. The reason you want to keep your candidate engaged, and this is talking about after you've made your selection. So you found that perfect candidate, you've offered them the opportunity, they've accepted, you've completed all the paperwork, and you've turned everything in on time. Better yet, you've turned everything in early, and you think you're ready to go. And for the most part, you are. But here's the rub. You've selected this person, and they're not actually going to start for another 2 months. The deadline for you to get your enrollment paperwork in and have your selection made is June 22nd. Now that's your paperwork deadline. I actually recommend that you make your selection earlier that week, June 18th, because it can take time to get that paperwork done, especially if you're turning in extra paperwork, like if there's any criminal history paperwork or if there's outside employment. So it's a process. This doesn't always happen overnight. It could take several days. But say you've turned everything in early or on time, and now what do? Because we have about 4 weeks between that June 22nd date and then when your VISTA goes to their pre-service orientation. So this slide is saying keep those folks engaged. And some ideas, if they're local, invite them to a staff meeting or have them attend a day of service. It's a good opportunity for you to email or send them your agency's personnel policies and have them start reading, send them reading materials. If they're not local, have a WebEx chat. I recommend doing one activity a week until that candidate goes to their pre-service orientation to let them know, hey, we haven't forgotten about you. We still want you. We're still excited. We hope you're excited. So I'm just going to say for folks that have already been through this and have been in this position, if you have any other ideas that you could throw out in the chat box in terms of keeping that candidate involved and engaged and interested before they actually start, go ahead and throw some ideas out there, because it's sadly not unusual to have a candidate drop out. And if your candidate drops out before they go to their PSO training and they never get sworn in, we all lose, because we lose that VISTA slot. VISTA slots cannot be backfilled. So this is kind of a one chance opportunity. And that's just the way the VISTA program is designed. And I know that's not fun for anyone, and it's happened before. So we want to do as much as we can to prevent that from happening and mitigate for that. So it's important to think now about how you're going to keep this fantastic candidate engaged. Do you have any questions about that?
It doesn't look like it. Thanks everyone for answering each other's questions and supplementing our information.
Okay, so I mentioned the pre-service orientation. That's what PSO stands for. The state office will actually hold a call with all of your VISTA candidates before they go to their PSO, and they'll cover things, what they'll need to know about going to PSO and what their role is, and it's their opportunity to connect with the state office. So all that will be taken care of by Tina and her staff in Ohio. What you need to know is when that call is taking place and how your VISTA candidate is going to get on that call. And I'll be sharing those details with you. So during that interview process, you need to let your VISTA candidate know that they need to be available for this pre-PSO call. The other point that I meant to mention earlier is that, I mentioned that the start date in terms of when your VISTA is going to show up on site to begin service with you is August 27th, but their PSO is actually August 21st to the 24th. So be sure that when you're selecting your VISTA candidate, that they are available August 21st, even though they don't start on site until August 27th. Okay, so I'm going to pause briefly, see if there are any other questions before we move into site training. No, okay. All right, so I'm going to let Sam cover the next few slides.
Okay, so these are some of the biggest complaints of VISTA members. Staff at the organization are not aware of the role of the VISTA member, or they're degraded by other staff. They don't ask the member to participate in assignments, and they don't have the opportunity to see impact in the community in just 1 year. So on that last point, since VISTAs aren't doing direct service, they're not really able to see how their work is impacting the community. So it's important for you to help frame that for them as they continue service to boost their morale. So I was able to be involved in other projects at my site and kind of just get a feel for the whole organization. I was invited to other meetings. I was invited to be a part of the community organizing team at my site. And that really helped me understand how my project fit in with the mission of my organization. And that really helped me stay in my service and have a successful year and enjoy my time. Because I didn't, I traveled so far and I felt like I had to stay there, but it was a really enjoyable experience for me, and I got to learn a whole bunch. So just making sure that your VISTA member is engaged in that way throughout their service term, and don't take for granted that they're there and they seem happy and they're working. It's really important for you to keep them engaged and keep them trained and excited about the work that they're doing. And if you're offering any other training to staff, like include your VISTA member in that if it's possible, things like that, just so that they really feel integrated into the team, because really they are, even though they're only there for 1 year, they can really have a huge impact on the way that your organization works. So this is important to do before your VISTA member begins. Introduce your staff to what the VISTA project is, meaning what VISTA itself is, and also what project your VISTA will be working on. Provide them with a copy of the VAD and let them know exactly what the focus is. A lot of the time, if staff don't understand the role of a VISTA, they will ask them to do things that are not appropriate tasks. They'll ask them to do some things that aren't involved with their work, and that can really be confusing to the VISTA member. So it's really helpful if everyone at your organization is on the same page about what the member is doing, and also understand the value of that member to your site. And this is something I was talking about a little bit earlier. Just invite your VISTA member to participate in staff meetings and help them understand the mission and how that is critical to the organization. So not just your site's your organizational mission, but how the VISTA mission is involved with that. How is that poverty alleviation, capacity building work going to help further your mission? And then make sure that you assign some tasks that allows the VISTA member to work with various departments. That will not only encourage your VISTA member to learn more about your organization, but it will also help your VISTA institutionalize the work that they're doing. So if you're in different departments, that's helpful for everyone to understand the project, but also to have that project be sustainable in the future in case some staff leaves. If there's turnover, then multiple people in the organization will know what the VISTA has been working on. And also invite your VISTA member to community meetings. So some VISTAs relocate like I did, and I was able to meet the residents. Even though I wasn't performing direct service, I was at least able to kind of understand how the community works, and that helped inform the work that I did to benefit them and my organization. Okay, so this is really helpful to boost morale because like I was saying before, the work is capacity building, so they're not really gonna necessarily be able to see how their work is impacting the community, especially if you're a new project, because that can take some time. So if you have them provide a report of what they're doing at monthly staff meetings, that's a good opportunity for them to be recognized in the organization, and also help your organization see the value of the VISTA program. Give the member tasks that have short-term outcomes. That way they can really see the progression of their work, and it doesn't feel like they only have these like really long-term goals that they can't really see anything happening with until the end of their service. And then provide the member with opportunities to talk with outside agencies about their work. That will help your organization gain more exposure to other organizations in your community. That could be helpful. And a lot of VISTA members deal with building partnerships and things like that. So that's one example of that kind of work. And then give the member specific deliverables to be presented to stakeholders. So that's making like presentations and things like that can also be used after the VISTA completes their service term.
Okay, great. So before moving on, I see that Elena, you had a great comment about thoughts as to whether it would be good to discuss during the interview phase any potential subsidies that you would offer. Yes. Yes. As a matter of fact, I recommend go ahead and put that in your listing. That's gonna make your listing more attractive. So if you are in a position to offer a housing subsidy or a transportation subsidy, maybe a phone usage subsidy, if your VISTA needs to use cell phone for service, definitely put that in your listing, because that's just going to make for a better, more attractive opportunity, and definitely discuss it during the interview process. Be very upfront about it. And for those of you that are wondering what I mean by those types of subsidies, you are at liberty to offer certain subsidies within reason, within the CNCS guidelines to your VISTA members. So for example, here at NeighborWorks, we offer a rental subsidy. Now the caveat being, we pay the landlord directly, since you're never allowed to give money or cash directly to a VISTA member. So there are parameters around these subsidies, and I'll be sharing more information about that. But I just want you to be aware of them. So at NeighborWorks America, we will pay the landlord a portion of the VISTA's rent, and then we will also cover a portion, or if not all, of their commuting expense. And that's something that we pay for to make not only our listing more attractive, but it's expensive to live here in the DC metropolitan area, and we know that. So we don't want this to be any more of a hardship than it already is. So that's a reason why you might offer a subsidy.
Debbie, this is Elena. Sorry, I just have a quick question about that. So I'm just wondering, I'm a little bit, I know this is a little bit, I think might be specific to us, but because of our like budget approval process sometimes happens after like the VISTAs have been hired, so we can say that like we can potentially offer these I mean, that's what happened this year. As we said, that we potentially offered these. Eventually, it was approved that we were allowed to offer them. But I'm worried, like in the case that like if potentially like something changes with the budget next year, and we say this is a potential thing that we could offer, and then it turns out that it wasn't something that we were able to offer, that a VISTA might feel like they have the rug kind of, even if we were clear that it was like a potential thing that we could offer, they might feel like the rug was pulled out from under them. And if you have any thoughts about how to navigate that?
Yeah, in that situation, I agree with you 100%. I would not mention it if you don't know for certain that you can follow through, because that might be the reason, or something that just tips the decision. So if you have a VISTA candidate that's considering your offer and another offer, and all things being equal, you say you're going to offer a subsidy because you think you might be able to, and then it turns out you can't. That would be great. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful.
Good question. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about pre-service orientation. I mentioned it earlier. For all the VISTA candidates in the NeighborWorks project, all of our people are going to PSO August 21st to the 24th, and that's going to be in Columbus, Ohio. The great thing about this is all our VISTA members will be together. They're not going to be spread apart at different training orientations, which has happened in the past. So this year, we're going to have an in-person, what's called a classic PSO. So you need to make sure that your candidate is available to the PSO. There's no way around it. They have to go to this. If your candidate does not go to PSO, they don't become a VISTA. So this is non-negotiable. If you run into a situation where it's going to be problematic for your VISTA candidate to go to this PSO, contact me immediately. In some situations, we might be able to address it, but for the most part, please try and find folks that are available to go to this PSO. Another thing about PSO is the VISTA candidates get sworn into service on the very last day of PSO, which is the 24th. So I believe the way the paperwork situation works out is that will be technically their first day of service. So when they show up on site at your agency the following Monday, they've already been sworn in and they are officially VISTA members. So that's important to know because, 365 days later, they're going to know exactly when their last day of service is. So if somebody officially, technically starts service on August 24th, 2018, their last day is 365 days later, which makes it August 23rd, 2019. And this is a 3.5-day orientation, and it really teaches the VISTAs about the rules, regulations, and responsibilities of being a VISTA, but it doesn't tell them anything necessarily about what you're going to share with them in terms of working at your agency. That's your responsibility. You'll offer an on-site orientation. They're learning about the VISTA program. Sam, is there anything about PSO you want to share since we're on the slide? Because I personally have never been. I've never been a VISTA, so I have not had this experience.
So I didn't get to go to the classic PSO, but I did do something called PSO Blend, which is an online version of the PSO, and it was really helpful for me to kind of understand the rules and regulations, but also understand the value of being a VISTA. So I am very excited that this year all the VISTA members or candidates get to go to the in-person PSO, because I think that really helps to build the camaraderie, and it also is very helpful when it becomes like later on they have these connections. They can reach out to people if they're feeling stressed out about service or anything. So that's something that's really cool about having an in-person kind of experience where you get to meet other people that are also really passionate about national service.
Yeah, another really cool thing that we're going to do this year at PSO, because we're getting all of our NeighborWorks VISTAs together at this one particular PSO, we're actually going to send Sam to go there to meet all of our incoming new VISTA members, and she's going to conduct a workshop just to get all of them acquainted with who and what NeighborWorks is, because you have to, as you can imagine, it's very confusing for them. There's NeighborWorks America, who they might not have any idea what that is. They might just be learning about national service and VISTA for the first time. They need to acquaint themselves with your site, with your city, with your community, with their supervisor, with their project. There's just a lot being thrown at them. So kind of, ease them into it, which is why we recommend that your on-site orientation be the first several weeks, not just 2 days, which I wouldn't accept. I'd actually throw that one back. In addition to having Sam go out and meet everybody at the physical in-person PSO, our incoming VISTA leader that will be our leader for the next program year, that person will also offer a webinar, welcome webinar for all our new NeighborWorks VISTAs, and that'll happen about 2 to 3 weeks into their service. And basically that'll just cover what it means to be a NeighborWorks VISTA as opposed to a VISTA anywhere else. And our VISTA leader does conduct check-in phone calls. So that's important for you to know that we do keep tabs on the VISTAs, and we want to know that they're having a good experience and a great service year. And then the on-site orientation is your responsibility. So this is the training that you provide to the members. And like I said, this really should happen over the first several weeks of their service. So when it comes time for you to submit all your candidate paperwork, when you select your VISTA candidate, you're also going to be turning into me an on-site orientation training plan. CNCS wants to see what your plan is to orient your new member. Now, this is something that you were asked about in your application. So a lot of you already have the basics of this plan together. If you submit something that says you're going to take 2 days out to train your members, I'm going to kick it back. 2 days is not enough to train somebody up to work for 12 months. So you want to have a plan that is at least a week long, but really the first 3 weeks is ideal. Now, of course, it doesn't have to be every day for the first 3 weeks, but you want to spread it out. And you can go on to see what it should include. You want to talk about your agency policies. You want to talk about what kind of relationship the member is going to have with the supervisor and other staff. Talk about your management style. Talk about how the VISTA prefers to learn and what their styles are. Definitely you want to review the VAD. Very important are the member expectations, their expectations and your expectations. It's basically an introduction to the agency. If you already have something in place that's an orientation for new staff, see if you can get your VISTA member in on that. That's something that we do here at NeighborWorks America. All of our VISTAs go to our new staff orientation. Okay, so this section covers reporting and data. And like I said, we're going to have a whole separate webinar about this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But before I move on, are there any questions about anything we've just covered? Okay, so the great thing about being part of a national project like NeighborWorks, where we are the sponsor, is that you submit your reports to us. You actually don't have to deal directly with CNCS all that often. We are the intermediary, we're the go-between. So the reporting, we try and make the reporting process as easy as possible, but these reports are required by CNCS. And so we do our best to kind of translate what it is they're asking for. And all that reporting comes into us. We compile that and we submit it to CNCS on your behalf. So you're going to be talking about the outcomes of your projects. We want to see, if you're meeting your target numbers that you gave us in your application and how that's going. Very important is you want to ensure your data accuracy and collection. This comes into play if we were to ever make a site visit, or if Tina from CNCS were to make a site visit, if the IG were to come out and make a site visit. These are things that we're going to look for. So your responsibility is you will have 2 progress reports that you're going to be submitting to us once every 6 months. You'll also have quarterly reports, and then I mentioned earlier that attendance report. Now, you're going to want to be sure to support with backup documentation all the numbers that you give us. And we will provide a collection tool that has been sanctioned by CNCS for you to capture this information. So if Sam and I were ever show up and do a site visit, we're going to say, hey, we need to see this data collection tool. And you'll say, all right, because you've had it, we've given it to you, we've provided training, you know how to use it, your VISTA knows how to use it, everyone's in compliance. But another component to that is just plugging a number into the tool isn't necessarily enough. We need to see the supporting documentation. So that could come in the form of maybe that number came from a volunteer database or a grant database, a survey. So again, just be prepared. We want to make sure that everybody is protected and in compliance, so there's no red flags and we can continue to manage a strong program. Okay, so now we're going to go a little bit into regulations. Now, you probably still have a few questions about reporting, and I really don't want you to worry about that too much now, because like I said, we will have another webinar on that and go into much more detail. I just want you to be aware that there are these requirements. Now, for anybody that's going to be wanting to select a candidate that has a criminal history, there's some things you need to keep in mind. There are some statuses that would disqualify a candidate to be a VISTA. So if somebody had been convicted of murder, if they appear on the sex offender registry, if they're on parole. Any of those three, they would not be available to serve. Now, if you select somebody that has a prior, say, DUI or an assault charge or even a drug charge, that's something that CNCS will decide whether or not they're going to accept that candidate. Part of that is based on the time of the crime, and then they may have other questions. And I'll get into more about that. Now, if your own agency conducts some type of a background check or criminal history check that goes above and beyond what VISTA does, you can certainly do that. As a matter of fact, you should do that. Something that VISTA does is they do run an FBI fingerprint check. So once your members begin to serve, they're going to be required to get fingerprinted and send those cards into VISTA headquarters. And they have to do that within 30 days of service. If they don't do it, CNCS will terminate them from service. So you will be receiving fingerprint cards from us, from NeighborWorks America. They're going to come in the mail, so you're going to get postal mail. And in this envelope will be the fingerprint cards that you will give to your VISTA. And and I'm going to encourage all of you to be a part of that process and help your VISTAs figure out where they need to go to get fingerprinted. Usually it's the local police station, but whatever it is in your area, help them do this, because we don't want to run into a situation where CNCS has to terminate that person because they weren't able to get their fingerprints in on time. So please be aware of the fingerprint requirement and the deadline. And then there's also information that will come out, you don't have it yet, but it will be coming out about the criminal history process. So if you do select a candidate with a criminal history, we take you step by step through that process and the paperwork and what you need to do. Basically, this screen sums it up. You are recommending this candidate to CNCS. So you will need to submit a letter explaining what the criminal history is, why you feel this person would make an excellent VISTA. You will need to submit a copy of the court documentation. So you need to ask that candidate for their court documentation. And then, it's not on here, but also there's a letter that the candidate should submit as well, saying why they want to be in VISTA. Or maybe it is on here. Okay, so what happens is the state office takes all this criminal history information, sends it to the VISTA headquarters for approval. And then the fingerprints get submitted. If anything is hit on the fingerprints, like if it turns out there's an issue with fingerprinting, we will contact you. If you don't hear from us, you should assume everything's okay. They don't notify us if everything's good. They only notify us if there's an issue. So that's something to keep in mind. And then we're good. And then once the fingerprint results are reviewed, the VISTA is cleared to continue serving. Okay, so I mentioned this a little earlier, how you can't fire a VISTA member. If you're having problems or challenges, please don't wait to notify us. Oftentimes, we can step in if you tell us early enough and help mitigate the situation. Sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. You want to be sure and document everything. Really think of it in terms of an employee. If you're having problems with an employee, you're going to document things, you're going to talk with your HR, and you're also going to want to make sure that when your VISTA first starts, that they've read and understand your agency policies. It's always smart to have them sign something saying, I've read this, I understand it, I accept it. Because should you find yourself in a situation where your VISTA violates one of your agency policies, then that's going to be part of your documentation that you're going to submit. And there's just going to be a number of questions that will be asked of you if you find yourself in the unfortunate situation where the VISTA is going to be terminated. So, we'll ask things like, how much leave time did your VISTA have left? Because if they exceed their leave time, they're automatically terminated. That's just a CNCS policy. If your VISTA goes AWOL and doesn't report to service, we need to know, when they were there, when they weren't there, and how did you deal with that situation? When did you try and contact that VISTA? If there are any misconduct or performance issues, you definitely want to document that and be as detailed as you can, like dates, times, players. Like I said before, if any of your agency policies were violated, sometimes it's a medical issue. And in that case, it could be a medical termination. But again, you want to secure documentation for all of this. Okay, so that was a lot. So let's stop for a second and see if there's any questions when it comes to VISTA termination. Okay, all right, excellent. So we're almost done. We just have a couple more slides left, and I'm going to let Sam go over what we call National Days of Service.
Okay, so one of the things that VISTA members do is they participate in at least one National Day of Service. That's an opportunity for them to do some direct service in the community. This is just a slide showing the days of service that we had during this VISTA program year. There's things like National Volunteer Week, which just went past, National Day of Service and Remembrance for 9/11, Make a Difference Day. Also, NeighborWorks Week is something that can be considered as a National Day of Service. And that's just something that we really want to get VISTA members engaged in the community in a way that they're not always able to. So it's just a nice way for them to continue to be involved in service, but just in a different way.
Okay, we have one more slide on that.
Yeah, and then MLK Day is one of the ones that CNCS really likes to recognize. It's a day on, not a day off. So to celebrate the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., they do a whole big kind of thing on the nationalservice.gov website where you can find different MLK events to participate in. I actually created a newsletter to highlight all of the great work that our VISTA members this year have done for MLK Day. So that was something that was really cool. And it's just really nice to be able to see the extra work that VISTA members can do and engage with their community. And yeah, that's all about the National Days of Service.
Okay, great. Well, that really just about wraps it all up, but I know there's still some questions out there. So we're going to address the questions that have come through the chat, and then I encourage you to unmute yourself if you'd like to chat and ask your question verbally, and we can do that as well. I just want to be very clear, something that came through the chat earlier was a question about service hours. So VISTA members are unlike any other national service members. You might have heard of AmeriCorps members, and they serve based on number of hours. VISTAs aren't like that. VISTAs are a full year, 365 days. So there's no minimum hourly requirement. It's not at all like AmeriCorps, so it's very important to understand the differences. If you have AmeriCorps volunteers on site, it's even more important that you understand the differences, because we have run into situations where there's been a lot of confusion. And you know, if a VISTA member comes in and sees that an AmeriCorps person is working fewer hours because that's just the way their program's set up, they might feel slighted or think, well, why am I working so much longer? And that's not fair, but that's the way the program's designed. So if you have or will be having AmeriCorps members serving at your site, be very clear to both the AmeriCorps and the VISTA the rules of the program and how it operates and what their hours are. Because we don't want to run into a situation where there's confusion and you're mismanaging that. If it is found out that your VISTA is not serving full time, that's highly problematic, and we want to avoid that. That's a huge compliance issue. You really want to be very careful about making sure they're serving full time, and you know, really be very transparent. It's not uncommon for a site. I'm not going to say it's ever happened in our program, but falsifying a timesheet is a huge no-no. And that's something the Inspector General would look for. So, you know, be very transparent with hours and your documentation, and always come to us if you have a question. Okay, what else have we had here? Okay, oh, great question. So this one came in from Sharon. If a VISTA has completed a year of service at another site, but not in the NeighborWorks project, would they need to attend PSO? No. As a matter of fact, if you select a candidate that has been to PSO anytime in the past 5 years, they don't have to go again. So good to know. And if you'd like to ask your question over the phone, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Debbie, this is Elena again. So I just had a question about one of the previous slides mentioned that it's really great for VISTAs to have opportunities to potentially collaborate with other staff so that they're really integrated into the institution of the organization. I'm wondering how to balance that, those opportunities. We of course, I mean, of course, in my experience, VISTAs are becoming very enthusiastic, are really willing to dig their hands into what their to as many opportunities as are available as also relate to their VAD. How to balance, I don't know if you have any advice around balancing the potential requests where they have the opportunity to partner with other divisions or other teams and have that learning opportunity, while still ensuring that they're not, I don't know, I mean that the requests that they're being asked are in line with their VAD, and that they're not potentially, I mean, it also gets into a little bit, I think, of the not replacing staff idea as well. So I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a feeling that Sam has some ideas on that, because she's been in that position. So I'm going to let her talk and then I'll chime in.
Yeah. So okay. I think when we were discussing that slide, it's not necessarily asking VISTA members to be involved, but giving them the opportunity. So for example, if there's some skill that your VISTA member has that they're not necessarily able to use, but could be used in a different situation, I think that just letting them know, hey, this is what's going on in the organization, maybe you want to give some time to this. But as long, they have to be working on their VAD, that is the primary responsibility of the VISTA member. So it's more so for example, my service site, they had big meetings for everyone in the community, and I would be able to be involved with that kind of work. Or if there is a specific project going on at a community, I would be able to, be engaged with that, even though it wasn't necessarily on my VAD, because ultimately, it helped me get to understand how the community was working and then influence the way that I was able to complete my VAD. So it's not necessarily asking members to do other things, but just giving them the opportunity to be involved in different projects.
Yeah. Another thing I'll mention is that Sam's really involved in our Ready initiative. And, you know, she finds ways to take her involvement from that and apply it to her work as VISTA leader, which is fantastic. But first and foremost, like her VISTA leader responsibilities come first. So if there's something with Ready, like that she just can't get to or be available for, then it's understood that that comes second. I will say, though, it's important that staff understand that these requests go through you as the supervisor, because you know, you may find, and I'm not saying that this is happening, you know, at the Boston office, but with everybody on the phone, it's really not unusual for somebody else in your organization to approach your VISTA member and say, you come with me, I need help, we need help, you need to work on this. And that's kind of a big no-no. Not to say that it might not be legitimate, but they really should go through the VISTA supervisor, and then the supervisor determines if that work or that project does fit in within the scope of the VAD, and if it doesn't, then it's probably not something your VISTA should be doing. And your VISTA, when they go to their PSO training, like they get that instruction. You know, they are very clear at PSO that they are to follow their VAD assignment and really not to deviate. And that if there is going to be an edit to the VAD, that is done in conjunction with the supervisor, then you actually need to contact us, and then we let CNCS know. So, and a VAD can be edited, but, you know, as some of you may know, it's a little bit of a process, but if it changes, that's okay. It's a working document, and we can make those edits. But that was a great question, because I feel like that led to something else that was important to share. So thanks, Elena.
No, thank you, Debbie. And Sam for that feedback. That's really helpful.
All right, anybody else, if you have a question, go ahead and chat that in, or find your little name on the Zoom technology, and you can unmute yourself. These are really good questions, by the way. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, I would like to wrap up by saying that your next deadline is May 4th. So you're going to want to have your service opportunity listing in the eGrants, and that's what your potential applicants see when they go into My AmeriCorps. Just as a reminder, I recommend keeping that listing open until about July 6th. So for those of you that were on the webinar last week, and we were talking about how to interact with eGrants and put that listing up, you heard us mention the July 6th date. Now, you're not actually going to be accepting applications that far out, because you're going to have this all wrapped up by July 6th, really by June 22nd. But the reason I say July 6th is because it keeps the listing open in case there's any last minute hiccups or problems. And what that means is sometimes the person you want to be your VISTA candidate, they might have some issues with the database. It doesn't always play nice. It's old, it's a bit antiquated system. IT issues happen all the time. And if you have your listing closed down too early, then that candidate can't get in there and do what they need to do. So this is just an insurance policy, not for you to get more applications, but to make sure that the person that you do want has ample time to interact with the system. Now, if you're all done and, you know, on July 2nd, you're saying, hey, I'm still getting applications, but I'm completely done, you could always go back in and manually close your listing. So that's an option. But as a safeguard, I recommend everybody keep it open to July 6th, only because I've dealt with this many, many times, and I just know it'll be a real time saver and cut down on any last second anxiety or stress in this process. So please go ahead and make sure that when you put your date, you're accepting applications right now until July 6th. And if you need to shorten that time up, we can do that later. Okay.
I think there's one question in the chat. Can the listing be changed if funding comes in that can be used for benefits for the VISTA?
Yeah, you can make edits to your listing, but just be aware that whenever you edit your listing, it's taken offline, and then CNCS staff have to review it again and make it go live again. And like we said, that can take 24 to 48 hours. So every time, if you're going to tinker with it or edit it, the second you hit that edit button, your listing's offline. So be sure if you're going to do that, that you mean to do it, and then alert us right away so then I could tell the state office to go in there as quickly as they can and make it live. That's a really good question. Okay, well, we are here. We're not going anywhere. You know, the best way to get a hold of us probably is email, but call if you need to, or email us to set up a time to have a phone call. We are here to help you through this process every step of the way. You know, if it's your first time, it's going to seem overwhelming. So we're here to break it down, and just keep an eye out for emails. I'm going to be sending you more information as you get closer to the time when you're going to be, you know, ready to complete enrollment paperwork. And I'm going to break it down in email. Just save my emails, have a folder, have a VISTA folder or a Debbie folder, whatever you want to do, just save those emails. But like I said, you always, you know, Sam and I are available for whatever comes up, whatever questions you have, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it. I know this is, you know, intense, and we threw a lot of information at you, but you're all going to do great. We're looking forward to heading into our next year. We're very excited. Thank you for being a part of this. You are the reason this whole thing works. So I appreciate your commitment and your passion and you wanting to do a great job because it makes us all look good. So thank you. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
And
thanks, everyone.
Start recruiting.